A shocking confession, and police say a mother admitted to killing her two young children, then leaving their bodies to decompose inside their Southwest Baltimore apartment. The Baltimore woman accused of killing her two young children is found incompetent to stand trial.
Jias Hall was charged with first-degree murder in the...
It started with a single, desperate cry of a child piercing the night. The kind of cry that sends chills down your spine. One you feel long after the sound fades. No one could have imagined the horrors unfolding just beyond their walls in a quiet Baltimore neighborhood. By the time the truth came to light, two innocent lives were lost. A family was torn apart, and a community was left grappling with questions no one could answer. How could something so unspeakable happen? And why did no one see it coming?
There's breaking news in Baltimore. Horrific new information after a mother is charged with murdering her two children. Court documents show a neighbor may have unknowingly heard the moments leading up to the deaths of Davin and Danira Thomas. And just today, police released their mother's mugshot. Jias Hall is charged with murder. Now, we want to warn you, some of the details you're about to hear may be disturbing.
That's right.
A shocking confession, and police say a mother admitted to killing her two young children, then leaving their bodies to decompose inside their Southwest Baltimore apartment. Tonight, police are still trying to answer.
Life often moved at a predictable pace in the quiet neighborhood of Coventry Road in Baltimore, Maryland. Children's laughter echoed through the streets, mingling with the hum of everyday activities. But in late August 2021, that peaceful routine was shattered by an unimaginable tragedy that would send shockwaves throughout the community and the nation.
The little girl and her brother Davin found dead inside the apartment.
It started with a foul odor. Neighbors had noticed the smell in the apartment complex for days, growing stronger with each passing moment. At first, they assumed it was something minor, perhaps a forgotten trash bag left to rot. But as the smell grew unbearable, so too did their concern. Something was wrong. On August 24, 2021, Baltimore police officers responded to a call from the building. They ascended the stairs to an apartment on Coventry Road where the stench emanated with an almost physical presence. The officers knocked on the door but received no answer. Forced to enter, they were met with a scene that would haunt them forever. Inside, the decomposing bodies of two young children, Davin Thomas Jr., aged 8, and his 6-year-old sister, Danira Thomas, were discovered. Davin's tiny body was found in a sleeping bag, a knife still lodged in his chest, and his head covered by a trash bag. Danira lay unclothed in the bathtub, a clothing item tightly wrapped around her fragile neck. The apartment was silent, save for the muffled sounds of police radios and the quiet gasps of those who had to witness the aftermath. Jias Hall was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, a city known for its rich history and vibrant culture, but also marked by social and economic challenges. Growing up, Jias' life was far from easy. She experienced instability at an early age, which shaped much of her adult life. Despite these struggles, she had aspirations for a better future, dreaming of providing her children with a stable and loving environment. Jias' journey into motherhood began in her late teens. Her first child, Davin Thomas Jr., was born when she was 19, and 2 years later, she welcomed her daughter, Danira Thomas. The children's father, whose identity has not been publicly disclosed, was not consistently present, leaving Jias to shoulder much of the responsibility on her own. Despite the challenges of single motherhood, those close to her recalled her deep love for her children and her desire to give them the life she never had. It was in her early 20s that Jias' struggles began to intensify. She faced significant financial difficulties, compounded by mental health issues that went largely unaddressed. Her challenges, reportedly stemming from genetic predisposition and environmental factors, began to affect her ability to care for her children. The pressure of raising two young kids without adequate support only exacerbated her condition.
Jamera, she just always, her kids were her top priority. She always wanted to do better for them. She went to school for them.
Despite these challenges, Jamaria's love for her children was evident to those around her. She often spoke of her hopes for their future, picturing a world where they could thrive and achieve their dreams. Yet her struggles with mental health created a gap between her aspirations and her reality, leaving her overwhelmed and vulnerable. As news of the discovery spread, the community's shock turned to outrage. Who could do such a thing? The answer came quickly: the children's mother, 28-year-old Jamaria Hall. Jamaria's story was a complex mix of love, pain, and unresolved trauma. Born and raised in Baltimore, she was once a vibrant young woman with dreams of a better life for herself and her children. But her promising future was overshadowed by a turbulent past, marked by moments of tragedy and instability. In 2018, Jamaria was convicted of first-degree arson after setting her parents' apartment on fire while her children, then aged 5 and 3, were inside. Miraculously, no one was harmed, but the incident exposed deep concerns about her mental health and her ability to care for her children.
They should have furthered the investigation because you set your own house on fire with your kids in it. So CPS should have took my opinion, CPS should have took the kid.
After serving a 1-year jail sentence and being placed on probation, Jamaria faced a long road to rehabilitation. Despite the severity of the arson case, she eventually regained custody of her children, a decision that raised serious questions about the oversight and judgment of Child Protective Services, CPS. The community argued that CPS's decision to return the children to her care lacked thorough assessment and underestimated the risks involved. Jamaria's life after regaining custody was a fragile attempt at normalcy. Friends and family described her as someone who loved her children profoundly, but struggled to maintain stability. Yet cracks in her ability to cope became apparent in the years following her release. Erratic behavior, moments of withdrawal, and instances of agitation were often overlooked or dismissed. Her life seemed like a dangerous balancing act, shifting between fleeting moments of peace and overwhelming episodes of despair. What stood out most about Jamaria was the stark contrast between her loving demeanor as a mother and the underlying turmoil she could not control. She often spoke of her aspirations for her children, hoping they would achieve the dreams she could not. Yet those dreams were overshadowed by the weight of her mental health struggles. Tragically, the system's failure to intervene in meaningful ways contributed to the unimaginable outcome that would claim the lives of her innocent children. The decision to reunite Jamaria with her children was a clear example of systemic shortcomings. In hindsight, her history of arson and signs of instability should have prompted a deeper investigation and continuous monitoring. Instead, the focus remained on reunification, a goal that, while noble in theory, ultimately placed the children at risk. This oversight has since become a central point in discussions about the responsibilities of child welfare agencies and the importance of prioritizing children's safety above all else. For the community, Jamaria's story became a cautionary tale about the intersection of untreated mental health issues, systemic failures, and the devastating consequences that can follow. It also served as a reminder of the fragility of human resilience and the critical need for comprehensive support systems for struggling parents and their children. In the weeks leading up to the murders, Jamaria's behavior grew increasingly erratic, with alarming changes that became evident to those around her. Her social media posts revealed a haunting glimpse into her state of mind, filled with cryptic messages about feeling overwhelmed, unsupported, and at times deeply hopeless. Posts that once carried the mundane details of daily life had turned into dark reflections of her inner turmoil.
The children's father told police the day the children were discovered, He observed the mom walking down the street, screaming and cursing at no one, and appeared to be under the influence.
Friends and acquaintances began noticing these warning signs. They reported her becoming distant and agitated, speaking in ways that didn't seem coherent. The father of the children said he saw her the day of the murders, shouting and swearing at herself. Yet, despite their concerns, no one felt equipped to intervene. A tragic silence that would soon lead to devastating consequences. On the night of August 19th, 2021, the first audible sign of the tragedy came in the form of screams heard by neighbors. The chilling details emerged later. A child's desperate voice crying out, "Mommy, no!" pierced the quiet night. It was a sound so heartbreaking that those who heard it would carry it with them, a grim echo of the horrors unfolding just beyond their walls. Following her arrest, Jamaria confessed to the murders during police questioning. Her words, however, were all over the place, offering no apparent or logical explanation for her actions. Investigators were left to piece together a portrait of a woman overwhelmed by inner demons, consumed by struggles she could no longer control. Her confession revealed no coherent motive, only a picture of desperation and mental collapse. One undeniable truth emerged. This was not the act of a sound mind, but of someone deeply unwell. Jamaria's mental health had long been a point of concern, raising alarms even before the events of 2021. After her release from jail in 2019, there were few, if any, substantial interventions to address her struggles. Despite her criminal history and evident signs of instability, the support she needed was either insufficient or absent. Her family and friends, though aware of her difficulties, were often left without the resources or knowledge to help her effectively. Her declining mental state underscored systemic failures on multiple levels. Mental health services that could have provided comprehensive care were either inaccessible or inadequately equipped to meet her needs. This lack of intervention created a perfect storm, leaving Jamaria to navigate her inner turmoil alone, with devastating consequences. By her arrest in 2021, it was painfully clear that Jamaria had been in a downward spiral for years. After the gruesome discovery of her children's bodies, she was quickly apprehended and underwent a psychiatric evaluation. In September of that year, a court declared her incompetent to stand trial. Experts noted that her severe mental illness rendered her incapable of understanding the charges against her or participating in her defense. Having been committed to a state psychiatric hospital, Jamaria's treatment became the focus of her legal outcome. Over the next 3 years, she remained under intensive care, undergoing therapy and evaluations to address her mental health challenges. In June 2024, the court reached a pivotal decision. Jamaria was deemed not criminally responsible for the murders due to her profound mental illness. This ruling meant she would not face prison time, but would instead remain in a secure psychiatric facility for long-term care and monitoring. The decision was met with mixed reactions. While some acknowledged the importance of addressing her mental health rather than solely punishing her, others expressed frustration that justice for Davin and Denaria seemed incomplete. However, legal experts and mental health advocates emphasized that this outcome reflected a broader issue: the failure to intervene earlier and prevent the tragedy altogether. Jamaria's case became a stark reminder of the critical need for systemic reforms in mental health care. Her journey through the legal and psychiatric systems highlighted glaring gaps in support, from her initial struggles, post-release to the events leading to her children's deaths. As she continues her treatment, her case serves as a sobering example of how untreated mental illness, when combined with systemic neglect, can lead to irreversible devastation. Many focus on ensuring such failures are not repeated, so no other family endures a similar fate.
The memorial gets larger by the hour. Neighbors just placed 24 roses. Now, according to police charging documents, the boy was stabbed. The girl had clothing wrapped around her neck. The children's father told police the day the children were discovered, he observed the mom walking down the street, screaming and cursing at no one, and appeared to be under the influence.
The case sparked outrage and heartbreak in Baltimore and beyond. Vigils were held in memory of Davin and Danaria, their bright futures cruelly cut short. Community members gathered to mourn the children, their innocence, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped their final days. Balloons and roses lay in front of the apartment complex as neighbors, friends, and strangers shared stories of the siblings' laughter, curiosity, and joy. Davin, described as a cheerful boy with an infectious smile, loved to draw and dreamt of becoming an artist. Danaria, sweet and playful, had an adventurous spirit that lit up every room she entered.
She sounded like she was getting herself together. So it made me happy to see that, things were finally starting to look up for her. She just basically said she was trying to get her life back in order and, slowly but surely. And I told her one day at a time.
Mayor Brandon, everybody, step up to the plate.
Interviews with those who knew Jamaria Hall offered further insight into the tragedy. One neighbor, Robin Poindexter, who had lived across the hall, looked heartbroken as she called on the mayor and city officials to do right by the children of Jamaria Hall and get them the justice they deserve. Chantel Carnachon, a friend of Jamaria's, expressed shock at the event, saying they had exchanged texts a week before, and Jamaria sounded like she was trying to get her life back together. The children's father, who has maintained a low profile since the incident, issued a brief statement through his attorney. "I am devastated by the loss of my children. They were my world, and this pain is unimaginable." His silence in the aftermath of the tragedy spoke volumes, leaving many to wonder about the depth of his grief and his reflections on the lives of Davin and Danaria. Together, these voices painted a collective portrait of sorrow, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of loss that gripped the community and everyone touched by the Hall family's story. But amid the mourning, there was also anger. How had the system allowed this to happen? CPS faced intense scrutiny for returning the children to Jamaria after the 2018 arson incident. Critics pointed to systemic failures in monitoring her mental health and assessing her fitness as a parent. For many, the tragedy underscored the urgent need for reforms in child welfare and mental health services. The apartment on Coventry Road remained a grim reminder of what had transpired. Neighbors struggled to move on, haunted by the knowledge that the cries they'd heard that fateful night had gone unanswered. The community's sense of safety was shattered, replaced by an unspoken fear that such horrors could happen again. For Jamaria, the path forward was uncertain. Confined to a psychiatric facility, she would receive treatment for the mental illnesses that had plagued her for years. But for those who had known and loved Davin and Danaria, no amount of justice or accountability could fill the void left by their loss. This tragic case became more than just a story of one family's downfall. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of the systems meant to protect the most vulnerable. It highlighted the importance of early intervention, comprehensive mental health care, and the vigilance required to prevent such tragedies in the future. Thank you for joining us in revisiting this tragic yet meaningful story. Let's honor Davin and Danaria's memory by committing to a better future. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel as we continue to raise awareness of stories that need to be told. Together, we can shine a light in the darkest corners of society and dare to face the unthinkable.